A high responsibility should unite all member states of the United Nations. Each of them should and has the means to significantly contribute to the tackling of the tasks of the UN. Current world faces very serious challenges out of multiple reasons. All of them, despite their difference in appearance, influence the course of the interstate relations in a greater or lesser extent, and often negatively influence the implementation of agreed plans and programs on key areas of the global agenda. This, in turn, may lead to the blurring of the very foundation of global security as a principle of the UN, which should not be allowed. Out of this, Turkmenistan over several years firmly and persistently upholds the principle of unity of security and its integrity. We are convinced that military and political security should not be considered separately from economic, ecological, energy, transport, food, biological, and information security. None of those mentioned areas cannot be secondary or irrelevant, and their solution cannot be postponed. I think that the main challenge of the UN is to provide the integral approach to the security challenge, mobilize the current experience, competence, ideas, and initiatives of the member states in a constructive manner, and step back from the short-term gains and advantages to attain truly crucial goals which will provide lasting peace, security, and development in the long term. This could only be achieved collectively and with UN in the main role. Amid the discussions on the role of the UN in the current world and suggestions to reform, it is a fact that there is no alternative to the UN. From the day of its development, UN stands as the only universal and legitimate organization responsible for peacekeeping and providing global and comprehensive security and stable modern structure of the interstate relations. This is the principal position of Turkmenistan. And for this reason, we have to consistently and persistently make use of the potential of global organization, its political, diplomatic tools, and moral authority in order to make balanced, non-ideological assessment of current events and tendencies, and to overcome the distrust and confrontational tensions in the world politics, and try to indicate the perspectives to compromise and to consider mutual interests. It is only possible under the auspices of UN in an open and genuine dialogue. We are aware that achieving this kind of dialogue will not be easy. However, it is necessary. On this regard, Turkmenistan proposes to begin discussing the opportunities of the development of the strategy of global security based on the principles of the Charter of the UN and universal standards of international law, considering the current realities and tendencies of global development. In our opinion, such strategy should reflect the existence of new risk factors, which appeared recently, along with traditional risk factors. Also, we consider it necessary to include a number of areas of the UN into it, in particular, preventive diplomacy as an instrument to prevent and diffuse conflicts, usage of the potential of neutrality for peaceful and political diplomatic settlement of disputes and contradictions, recovery of the structure of trustful dialogue based on the decisions of the General Assembly of the UN, and declaring 2021 as the International Year of Peace and Trust, and 2023 as the International Year of Dialogue as guarantee of peace. Time confirmed the relevance of these resolutions in current situations. In order to achieve global and comprehensive security, Turkmenistan emanates from the necessity of giving a pronounced regional context to the work of the UN. We conclude that such approach aims to contribute sufficient specificity and to increase its functionality and effectiveness. I am convinced that the time has come to launch an inclusive, full format and systematic dialogue between Central Asia and UN. Turkmenistan respectfully invites partners to its initiations. On this regard, our country is taking the initiative to create, under the auspices of UN, format of the Conference on Security in Central Asia and bordering areas. Goal of the conference is the development of approaches and decisions aimed in aligning and synchronizing the efforts of the Central Asian states and global community, international organizations, financial and economic institutions to provide stable, conflict-free development of the region. We express our readiness to host the first conference in Ashgabat in 2024. Dear participants, among the key areas of the work of the UN in coming years, Turkmenistan considers the addressing of urgent climate and ecological issues. Among them, we highlight the issues regarding global methane pledge. I have to tell that with joining the Paris Agreement for Climate Change in 2017, a number of relevant national programs were adopted in our country. National events are being held aimed at reducing and eliminating negative effects of methane emissions into the atmosphere. We are primarily talking about phased implementation and use of modern, green, and resource-saving technologies, mainly in energy, industry, and transport areas. At the same time, we welcome the efforts of the global community for realizing global methane pledge. And of course, we expect substantive cooperation and targeted assistance from the specialized agencies of the UN, member states of the organization, and other interested partners. On this context, the roadmap on the development of international cooperation aimed at study on joining of Turkmenistan to the global methane pledge was recently approved. Soon we will send this document to the UN Secretariat. Overall, I believe that the time has come for the UN to pay close and effective attention to the ecological issues in Central Asia, overcome certain delays in addressing them, and begin taking targeted and specific actions to create a coherent ecological strategy of the UN regarding the region with near 80 million population, covering a vast area with its unique natural resources and biodiversity, and at the same time located at a region with serious ecological risks. As a significant step to take a strategic approach in ecological issues of Central Asia, Turkmenistan is proposing the establishment of a specialized agency, Regional Center for Technologies related to climate change in Central Asia, which will work substantively and systematically on the topic of climate. We are ready to offer organizational and technical terms for the functioning of such center in the capital city of Turkmenistan, Ashgabat. Central Asia, region adjoining the Caspian Sea. Everyone is aware of the importance of this lake with its unique natural complex in the context of global ecological agenda. As a result of active and respectful long-term cooperation of coastal countries, the key principles of politics on the Caspian were developed, including the Convention on the Legal Status of the Caspian Sea. Last summer, on the Sixth Caspian Summit in Turkmenistan, all the participants firmly affirmed their readiness for tight cooperation on ecological issues. I believe that it gives a good opportunity for the beginning of wide, systematic interaction of coastal countries with the UN. On this regard, Turkmenistan is proposing the creation of the Caspian Ecology Initiative, which will be aimed at becoming a platform for substantive and professional interaction on a wide range of issues associated with environmental protection of the Caspian, preserving its biological resources, and tackling of the several pressing ecological issues. We think that the realization of this initiative should be done with a tight cooperation with the UN, its agencies, and institutions. Dear participants, as a responsible member state of the UN, Turkmenistan clearly formulates and implements its own approaches and actions by defining the priorities which will make a tangible contribution and serve for the benefit of global goals, facilitating their early achievement. Among those priorities, we highlight the realization of SDGs in transport area. As you know, Turkmenistan initiated the creation of effective international platforms on this important area. Let me mention the first ever global conference on sustainable transport, which was successfully held in Ashgabat in 2016. Also, the ministerial meeting of the landlocked developing countries, which was organized last summer with the cooperation of the UN in Turkmenistan. We are proud that purposeful work of Turkmenistan was marked by the adoption of 6 resolutions on transport by the General Assembly in recent years, which were initiated by Turkmenistan. Among the recent ones, resolution on the World Sustainable Transport Day, which was adopted in May. We thank all the member states for support of the document. On this regard, relying on the state of a resolution, Turkmenistan is proposing to convene a high-level meeting within current session on occasion of the World Sustainable Transport Day. We hope for the assistance of relevant UN agencies in organizing this event in New York. The important area of the work of Turkmenistan in achieving the SDGs is maximizing assistance to the UN in addressing the food issue. COVID-19, along with other adverse factors, has exposed the weakness of the countries where this issue is unsolved and where the population doesn't get proper nutrition. Unity, integrity, and determination is necessary when addressing the issues related to the access of countries and regions of the food resources, guaranteed proper nutrition as an integral part of human rights, and the key factor of health and normal physical development, especially for children. It is obvious that it needs groundbreaking decisions and new approaches which will overcome political, ideological, and conjunctural barriers. Consequently, Turkmenistan comes forward with an initiative to convene a major international forum on food security with the cooperation of World Food Programme, World Health Organization, and United Nations Children's Fund under the auspices of UN. We express our readiness to provide terms for holding such event in the capital city of Turkmenistan within the agreed time frame. Dear participants, dear heads and members of delegations, next year in Turkmenistan and far beyond its border, including the UN, we'll celebrate the 300th anniversary of prominent son of the Turkmen nation, poet, philosopher, and public figure, Mahmud Prage. Whole humanity honors the memory of him and pays due respect to the great humanitarian, who majorly contributed not only to the world literature, but also to the development of Eastern civilization and of the whole world. And I would like to conclude with an excerpt from the poem of Mahmud, Call to the Humanity, in which he addresses his fellows and descendants these life-affirming lines. No matter asleep or awake, he will be loyal to his intentions. Let the loyalty to the creative thoughts, ideals of peace, justice, and progress serve as a main and clear guide in our joint work. Thank you very much.
On behalf of the Assembly, I wish to thank the President of Turkmenistan for the statement made, and I request protocol to escort His Excellency.
Assembly will hear an address by His Excellency Volodymyr Zelensky, President of Ukraine. I request protocol to escort His Excellency. On behalf of the General Assembly, I have the honor to welcome His Excellency Volodymyr Zelensky, President of Ukraine, and invite him to address the Assembly.
Thank you very much. I welcome all who stand for common efforts, and I promise, being really united, we can guarantee fair peace for all nations. What's more, unity can prevent wars. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Secretary General, Mr. President, fellow leaders, this call saw many wars, but not as active defender against the aggressions. In many cases, the fear of war, the final war, was the loudest here, the war after which no one would gather in the General Assembly Hall again. The Third World War was seen as a nuclear war, a conflict between states on the highway to nukes. Other wars seemed less scary compared to a threat of the so-called great powers firing their nuclear stockpiles. So the 20th century taught the world to restrain from the use of the weapons of mass destruction, not to deploy, not to proliferate, not to threaten with, and not to test, but to promote a complete nuclear disarmament. Frankly, this is a good strategy, but it should not be the only strategy to protect the world from the final war. Ukraine gave up its third largest nuclear arsenal. The world then decided Russia should become a keeper of such power. Yet history shows it was Russia who deserved nuclear disarmament the most back in 1990s. And Russia deserves it now. Terrorists have no right to hold nuclear weapons. No right. But truly, not the nukes are the scariest now. While nukes remain in place, the mass destruction is gaining its momentum. The aggressor is weaponizing many other things, and those things are used not only against our country, but against all of yours as well. Fellow leaders, there are many conventions that restrict weapons, but there are no real restrictions on weaponization. First, let me give you an example. The food. Since the start of the full-scale war, the Ukrainian ports in the Black and Azov seas have been blocked by Russia. Until now, our ports on the Danube River remain the target for missiles and drones. And it is a clear Russia's attempt to weaponize the food shortage on the global market in exchange for recognition for some, if not all, of the captured territories. Russia is launching the food prices as weapons. The impact spans from the Atlantic coast of Africa to the Southeast Asia, and this is the threat scale. And I would like to thank those leaders who supported our Black Sea Grain Initiative and program Grain from Ukraine. Thank you so much. United, we made weapons turn back into food again. More than 45 nations saw how important it is to make Ukrainian food products available on the market, from Algeria to Spain to Indonesia and China. And even now, when Russia has undermined the Black Sea Grain Initiative, we are working to ensure food stability. And I hope that many of you will join us in these efforts. We launched a temporary sea export corridor from our ports, and we are working hard to preserve the land routes for grain exports. And it is alarming to see how some in Europe, some of our friends in Europe, play out solidarity in political theater, making thriller from the grain. And they may seem to play their own role, but in fact, they are helping set the stage to a Moscow actor. Second, weaponization of energy. Many times, the world has witnessed Russia using energy as a weapon. Kremlin weaponized oil and gas to weaken the leaders of other countries when they came to the Red Square. Now the threat is even greater. Russia is weaponizing nuclear energy. Not only it is spreading its unreliable nuclear power plant construction technologies, but it is also turning other countries' power plants into real dirty bombs. Look, please, what Russia did to our Zaporizhia power plant. Shelled it, occupied it, and now blackmails others with radiation leaks. Is there any sense to reduce nuclear weapons when Russia is weaponizing nuclear power plants? Scary question. The global security architecture offers no response or protection against such a treacherous radiation threat, and there is no accountability for radiation blackmailers so far. The third example is children. Children. Unfortunately, various terrorist groups abduct children to put pressure on their families and societies. But never before the mass kidnapping and deportation would become a part of the government policy. Not until now. We know the names of tens of thousands of children and have evidence on hundreds of thousands of others kidnapped by Russia in the occupied territories of Ukraine and later deported. The International Criminal Court issued arrest warrant for Putin for this crime. And we are trying to get children back home. But time goes by. What will happen with them? What will happen to them? Those children in Russia are taught to hate Ukraine, and all ties with their families are broken. And this is clearly a genocide. When hatred is weaponized against one nation, it never stops there. Each decade, Russia starts a new war. Parts of Moldova and Georgia remain occupied. Russia turned Syria into ruins. And if not Russia, the chemical weapons would have never been used there in Syria. Russia has almost swallowed Belarus. It is obviously threatening Kazakhstan and other Baltic states. And the goal of the present war against Ukraine is to turn our land, our people, our lives, our resources into a weapon against you, against the international rules-based order. Many seats in the General Assembly Hall may become empty if Russia succeeds with its treachery and aggression. Ladies and gentlemen, the aggressor scatters deaths and brings ruins even without nukes, but the outcomes are alike. We see towns, we see villages in Ukraine wiped out by Russian artillery, leveled to the ground completely. We see the war of drones. We know the possible effects of spreading the war into the cyberspace. The artificial intelligence could be trained to combat well before it would learn to help the humanity. Thank God, people have not yet learned to use climate as a weapon. Even though humanity is failing on its climate policy objectives, this means that extreme weather will still impact the normal global life, and some evil state will also weaponize its outcomes. And when people in the streets of New York and other cities of the world went out on climate protest, we all have seen them. And when people in Morocco and Libya and other countries die as a result of natural disasters, and when islands and countries disappear underwater, and when tornadoes and deserts are spreading into new territories, and when all of this is happening, one unnatural disaster in Moscow decided to launch a big war and kill tens of thousands of people. We have to stop it. We must act united to defeat the aggressor and focus all our capabilities and energy on addressing these challenges. As nukes are restrained, likewise the aggressor must be restrained and all his tools and methods of war. Each war now can become final, but it takes our unity to make sure that aggression will not break in again. And it is not a dialogue between the so-called great powers somewhere behind the closed doors that can guarantee us all the new wars era, but open war of all nations for peace. Last year, I presented the outlines of the Ukrainian peace formula at the UN General Assembly. Later, in Indonesia, I presented the full formula. And over the past year, the peace formula became the basis to update the existing security architecture. Now we can bring back to life the UN Charter and guarantee the full power for the rules-based world order. And tomorrow, I will present the details at a special meeting of the UN Security Council. The main thing is that it is not only about Ukraine. More than 140 states and international organizations have supported the Ukrainian peace formula fully or in part. The Ukrainian peace formula is becoming global. Its points offer solutions and steps that will stop all forms of weaponization that Russia used against Ukraine and other countries and may be used by other aggressors. Look, for the first time in modern history, we have a real chance to end the aggression on the terms of the nation which was attacked. And this is a real chance for every nation to ensure that aggression against your state, if it happens, God forbid, will end. Not because your land will be divided and you will be forced to submit to military or political pressure, but because your territory and sovereignty will be fully restored. We launched the format of meetings between national security advisors and diplomatic representatives. Important talks and consultations were held in Hiroshima, in Copenhagen, and in Jeddah on the implementation of the peace formula. And we are preparing a global peace summit. And please, I invite all of you who do not tolerate any aggression to jointly prepare